All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about something that's a really big deal for workplace safety, something that honestly affects way more people than you'd probably guess: how to avoid exposure to bloodborne pathogens. So when you hear the term bloodborne pathogens, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably a hospital, right? Or maybe a science lab. But is that really the only place we need to worry about them? Yeah, you probably guessed it. Think again. The reality is, this risk can pop up in pretty much any workplace. I mean, if you're the person who is the designated first aid responder, or if you're on the janitorial staff, or hey, even if you're just someone who could potentially be around if there's an accident, then you're going to want to pay close attention. Okay, so let's start by digging into what we're actually up against here. We're talking about an invisible hazard, which, is often the most dangerous kind. And this really puts it into perspective. Just look at the scale of this. We are talking about millions of people right here in the US who are living with a bloodborne disease. So this isn't some rare one in a million thing. It means that basically any encounter with blood, or what safety pros call other potentially infectious materials, you'll see it as OPM, carries a real potential risk. Let's break those numbers down a bit. I mean, check this out. We've got over 850,000 people dealing with chronic Hep B. Then you have hepatitis C, which is a staggering 2.7 million plus, and on top of that, about 1.1 million people with HIV. These aren't just statistics on a chart. This is the reality of how common these pathogens are out in the world. So what are we really talking about here? Well, the official OSHA definition is pretty straightforward. They're microorganisms in human blood that can make you sick. The big three that we're laser focused on in the workplace are HIV, hepatitis B virus, or HBV, and hepatitis C virus, HCV. And these are no joke. They can cause some serious life-altering problems, like severe, long-term damage to your liver. Now, this next point is absolutely critical. Not all of these viruses are the same when they're outside the human body. Take HIV, for example. It actually doesn't last very long at all once the fluid it's in dries up. But hepatitis B, that's a whole different story. That virus is tough. It can actually survive for at least a full week in dried blood on a surface. Think about that. A tool, a countertop, still posing a risk a week later. And that is why a proper, super thorough cleanup is just, well, it's not optional. All right, so we've got a handle on the threat. Now for the important part. Let's build your personal defense plan. Because when it comes to this stuff, being prepared is everything. And a huge piece of that plan is knowing what your employer is legally required to do for you. According to OSHA standards, they have to provide a written exposure control plan. They have to use safety controls to stop exposures before they happen. They have to give you all the necessary personal protective equipment, or PPE, for free. They also have to offer you a free hepatitis B vaccine. And if an exposure ever does happen, they've got to make sure a medical evaluation is available to you. Okay, if you remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. This is the golden rule, the single most important idea for protecting yourself. It's called universal precautions, and it's actually super simple. You treat all human blood and body fluids as if you know they're infectious. Period. No guessing, no assumptions, no exceptions. So what does that actually look like day to day? Well, it's about simple but really powerful actions. Got a cut or a rash? Cover it up. Think you might have been exposed to something? Wash your hands, and I mean thoroughly, with soap and water. And if there's a spill, use a real disinfectant to clean it up. It's all about making these safe habits second nature. All right, let's talk about PPE for a second. Some people think it's not all that effective, but that's just plain wrong when you use it the right way. PPE, we're talking gloves, masks, eye protection, is an incredibly effective physical barrier between you and an infection. The key thing to remember is this: its job is to make sure nothing, no blood, no infectious material, gets through to your clothes or, more importantly, your skin. And for hepatitis B specifically, we have another amazing tool in our toolbox: a vaccine. It's safe, it's really effective, and honestly, it's the best way to prevent getting a virus that can cause some nasty chronic liver disease. And don't forget, if your job puts you at risk, your employer has to offer it to you, free of charge. Now, it's totally your choice whether to get it, but it's a critical layer of defense. Okay, so you're all prepared, you've got the knowledge, but what happens when you actually have to deal with a contamination scene? What do you do then? Let's walk through the step-by-step process for cleaning up and disposing of it safely. Sometimes the most important safety rule is knowing what not to do. So listen up. These are the big nevers. Never, and I mean ever, pick up something like contaminated broken glass with your hands, not even with gloves on. Use tongs, use a brush and dustpan. Also, don't eat, drink, or mess with your contact lenses in an area where there's been an exposure. And a huge one, never, ever try to recap, bend, or break a contaminated needle or sharp. So here's the right way to do it. Step 1, get your PPE on. Step 2, grab those tools, tongs, a dustpan, whatever you need for any sharp objects. Step 3 is cleaning. You need to use an EPA-registered disinfectant or a simple 10% bleach solution. And this is important. Soap and water just won't cut it. It's not strong enough to kill these pathogens. And finally, step 4, get rid of all the contaminated stuff in the right, properly labeled bag. Now, here's something you've got to know. Not all contaminated waste is created equal. There's something called regulated waste. Think of liquid blood or stuff that's so soaked that blood would drip out if you squeezed it. That stuff has super strict rules for disposal. Then there's unregulated waste. This is more like a used bandage or paper towels where the blood has been completely absorbed and it's not going to drip. Those have fewer rules. Knowing which is a really big deal for getting rid of it safely. And whenever you're dealing with that regulated waste, this is what you have to look for. The container must have that universal biohazard symbol on it, and the word biohazard has to be there too. This is way more than just a rule, you guys. It's a critical warning sign to protect every single person who might have to handle that container later on. So we've gone over prevention, we've gone over cleanup, but what if the worst case scenario happens? What if you think you've actually been exposed? We need to talk about your immediate action plan. What you do in those first few moments is critical. So let's just stop for a second and really think about this. An exposure incident happens, maybe a splash to the face or a poke from a contaminated sharp. In that split second, what is the number one first thing you have to do? Here you go, 3 steps. They're simple, but they are absolutely vital. First, wash. Get yourself to a sink and wash that area with plenty of soap and water. Second, flush. If anything got it in your eyes, nose, or mouth, you need to flush them with clean water, and lots of it. And third, report. Find your supervisor and tell them what happened right away. Don't put it off, don't wait. The second you report it, a whole professional process gets set in motion. Your employer is required to make a confidential medical evaluation available to you. They'll document exactly what happened and how, and they will set up all the necessary follow-up care. Remember, this is your right, and the whole thing is kept completely confidential. Okay, so let's boil this all down to the absolute must-knows, the key takeaways. Number 1, treat all blood like it's infectious. That's universal precautions. Number 2, know your workplace's exposure control plan and actually follow it. 3, always use your PPE. And 4, report every single incident. I don't care how small you think it is, report it. And that leaves us with one last really important question that's just for you. You have a fundamental right to be safe where you work. So, do you know where to find your workplace's exposure control plan right now? If the answer is no, make it your number 1 priority to find out as soon as you can. Seriously, your safety could literally depend on it.